Our first guest on this very special edition of the Soapbox is our friend John Gold. John Gold describes himself as an advocate for 9/11 justice. John Gold, welcome back to Cindy Sheehan Soapbox.
Thank you for having me on to talk about this important issue, Cindy.
And it's our 5th anniversary show. Whoop, whoop.
Awesome. Congratulations.
And people have to know, too, you're not just a 9/11 justice advocate, but you're a friend of mine, and you are actually do a lot of volunteering for Cindy Sheehan Soapbox. So very grateful to you for that for the past few years.
It's been my pleasure for the past few years, and I'll continue to do so.
It's taken a lot of us to keep this show going, that's for sure. So, John Gold, I am also a 9/11 I would say I'm more like a truth advocate, although I am very into the justice angle also, because I would love to see justice for my own son's death and for millions of people who have suffered in Iraq and Afghanistan. And this is just since 9/11, Yemen, Libya, Syria, wherever the empire reaches. But you and I always have this little debate. Because every day you write on your Facebook wall, we were lied to about 9/11. And I always say we were lied to about everything. And, well, hold on. I want to go a little bit further with this question. Capitalism, the empire, all the lies kill at least 30,000 people a day because of poverty and starvation. So, and I understand your point, but tell my listeners why this 9/11 issue is so important today, in 2014 now. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Well, just to give an example, just the other day, a judge ruled that the NSA wiretapping was legal. Mm-hmm. And they did that by using 9/11 as the justification for it. I mean, that's just a recent example, but in the post-9/11 world, it seems that everything that we hate that's happening right now, the drone strikes, the warrantless wiretapping, the torture, it's all justified by 9/11. So, yes, we've been lied to about everything, but I think it's important to point out the fact that we were lied to about 9/11 so as to take away the justification that they so often use.
Right. And, I do get that, but, they dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan because of the lie of Pearl Harbor. So, it's just like, I guess it's important because people also, like, you didn't want me to call you a 9/11 truth seeker because you say it's so demonized. It's like saying somebody is a mass murderer if you say they're a 9/11 truth seeker.
Well, no, the phrase 9/11 truther has been demonized by the media for the last 6 or 7 years. They've made it the equivalent of a baby killer mm-hmm. or a dog torturer. And I believe that's one of the reasons many progressives that we know refuse to touch the 9/11 issue, because they don't want to be painted with the 9/11 truth brush.
Right.
They don't want to lose their pulpits.
Right. Well, of course, they made 9/11 truthers seem worse than baby killers because they support almost everything that baby killer Obama does.
Well, I coined the phrase 9/11 truther, and when I did, the meaning that I had for it was somebody that supports the 9/11 family members seeking justice and accountability, somebody that supports the 9/11 first responders who were sick and dying and that required health care, and someone that tries to stop everything that's happening in the post-9/11 world by using the truth, something that we've been denied by our government. That was the original, quote, definition of what a 9/11 truther is. But as I said, they've destroyed it.
Well, you have some horrible health problems that have confined you. confined your movements, but you were in the hospital for a while, and while you were in the hospital, a judge ruled that 9/11 members of victims' families could sue Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Could you tell my listeners more about that?
I sure can. Well, for years, the 9/11 family members tried to bring about litigation against the Saudis for the part they had to play in the 9/11 attacks. But they were blocked by both the Bush administration and the Obama administration. Now, from a report from ABC News, it says, a new ruling struck down an earlier decision that found Saudi Arabia immune from lawsuits. The Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals said it's in the, quote, interests of justice to allow them to proceed. Mm-hmm. So now 9/11 family member William Doyle said that he's ecstatic that he can finally get 9/11 into the courts. Mm-hmm. And another development that's taken place recently is that Representatives Stephen Lynch and Walter Jones introduced a resolution urging President Obama to make public 28 pages from the Joint Congressional Inquiry into 9/11 that remain secret. Those 28 pages have to do with Saudi Arabia's connection to the attacks. So what I've done is I've gathered a list of 11 points of interest having to do with Saudi Arabia and 9/11. And the reason I did this was because I want to make sure this information is available to people, because I do not think the corporate media is going to cover it as they should.
Well, you have been long on the case of Saudi Arabia, haven't you?
Well, Saudi Arabia is but one part of the cover-up of 9/11. There's a multitude of cover-ups regarding 9/11, but we're going to focus on Saudi Arabia. And if you want me to read this list of information, I want to preface this by saying that I do not advocate war against Saudi Arabia. I believe individuals responsible should be held accountable and not entire countries. Otherwise, you will see thousands upon thousands of innocents murdered for a crime they didn't commit, like we've seen in Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and elsewhere. So I want to make sure everybody understands that before I start into my list.
Okay.
Number 1. In late January 2001, after the elections, intelligence agencies are told to, quote, back off from investigating the bin Ladens and the Saudi royals. Reporter Greg Palast notes that President Clinton was already hindering investigations by protecting Saudi interests. However, as he puts it, quote, where Clinton said go slow, Bush policymakers said no go. The difference is between closing one eye and closing them both, end quote. Number 2. The famous Jersey Girls released a petition in 2006 calling for the release of those 28 redacted pages from the Joint Congressional Inquiry, as well as other pertinent information. They managed to collect over 17,000 signatures. The media ignored them, and so did our government. Number 3. The 28 redacted pages is just the tip of the iceberg. The 9/11 Commission has yet to release all of their documents, and many of the memorandums for the record, or MFRs, that they have released are greatly redacted. An MFR that has not been released is that of former Saudi ambassador to the United States, Prince Bandar. Just so you know, an MFR is just an interview sheet that goes over what staffers spoke about with witnesses. Number 4. The 2 hijackers that former Senator Bob Graham mentions in San Diego were living with an FBI informant by the name of Abdusattar Sheikh. The FBI blocked him from testifying before the Joint Congressional Inquiry. Number 5. Between April 3rd through the 7th, 2001, 3 hijackers are given visas to the United States through the U.S. Consulate in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. They are Nawaf al-Hazmi, Salam al-Hazmi, and Khalid al-Midar. Al-Midar and Nawaf al-Hazmi are already, quote, Al-Qaeda veterans and battle-hardened killers, end quote. All 3 men have indicators in their passports marking them as Islamist radicals. These indicators are used to track them by Saudi authorities, but are apparently not noticed by U.S. officials. There are many other questions about how the hijackers obtained their visas. Look up Michael Springman and the Visa Express program. Number 6. According to WikiLeaks in 2010, Saudi Arabia was still the, quote, chief financiers, end quote, of Al-Qaeda, and it looks like that is still the case. We would be foolish to think this wasn't well known to the United States for years, and yet we still do business with them and sell them billions of dollars in weapons. Number 7. According to James Risen's book, State of War, in March 2001, months before 9/11, Bush and Prince Bandar had a discussion where Bush tells Bandar that, quote, if there is to be military action in Iraq, then it has to be decisive. That can finalize the issue. The Iraqi opposition is useless and is not effective. End quote. Number 8. Those two hijackers in San Diego were seemingly protected by the CIA. You can read about it in Kevin Fenton's book, Disconnecting the Dots, and in the further works by Ray Nowosielski, Rory O'Connor, and John Duffy. Number 9. Prince Bandar, someone referred to as, quote, Bandar Bush, his wife is connected to money of those two hijackers in San Diego. The 9/11 report said that the source of the funding for the attacks was, quote, of little practical significance, end quote. I think that's very significant, don't you? Number 10. According to former New York Times reporter Phil Sheehan, the executive director of the 9/11 Commission, Philip Zelikow, and team leader Dieter Snell took part in a late-night editing session to delete any passages within the 9/11 report having to do with Saudi support for the hijackers. Number 11. In November 2007, Prince Bandar will make the claim that Saudi intelligence was, quote, actively following, end quote, most of the hijackers, quote, with precision, end quote. There is a multitude of information out there that suggests the Bush administration was well aware that the attacks were coming. Even though he says he didn't, personally, I wonder if Bandar shared any of this information with anyone within the Bush administration.
And that's the final point, and I just have one thing to say. I would just like to say that I cannot recommend enough the website historycommons.org and their complete 9/11 timeline. I will make this, as I said, I will make the information I said available on Cindy Sheehan's Soapbox. The information I provided is just the beginning. The cover-up of Saudi Arabia is just one cover-up having to do with 9/11. There are many more.
Well, John, thank you. And you do have links and backup information for all of those points that people can access. And my question is, how are the you know the families, you don't know all the families, but you are in communication with a lot of families. How are they going to move forward with this information and with the news that they are able to sue Saudi Arabia now?
Well, what I'm hoping is now that 9/11 will be allowed in the courts with regards to Saudi Arabia, that information like this is brought to light during the proceedings. I am not sure how they are going to go forward with this. I do know that they're extremely excited about it, because in a way, I'm hoping that it opens up a can of worms. Mm-hmm. You know, when you bring Saudi Arabia into the mix, you can bring in everything else, the CIA, the fact that NORAD lied, a whole bunch of things that you could bring up in a courtroom. So I hope that's what they plan on doing. But again, I don't know the route they're going to take.
Well, also, there's a little-known case, if you only pay attention to the corporate media, that there's a woman in Iraq who's suing George Bush and Dick Cheney in federal court. And that's a little-known case, although the attorney, Indar Komer, has been on Cindy Sheehan's Soapbox. But I am happy that this might lead to justice for the 9/11 families, but also, we need justice for the troops that have been killed in Iraq and Afghanistan. We need justice for the people of Iraq and Afghanistan. And, I'm just wondering how we can proceed with that, to go forward with that.
Well, once we take away the justification for the post 9/11 world, I'm hoping that we get justice for everybody, the families, the people of the world. We were all attacked that day. And I think that once we take away that justification, once we take away their 9/11 card, they can no longer use it. And that may open up the door to bring the troops home, to bring accountability for the torture that we've seen. It would hopefully reverse all legislation that we despise in the post 9/11 world. At least this is my hope. I know that it could be considered a pipe dream, but I have to keep fighting.
Well, we just recently saw the extension or reauthorization of the NDAA.
Right, the NDAA. And indefinite detention is still part of the NDAA, from what I read. This has got to stop. We've been doing this for years, Cindy.
You can't say the S. No, you're right. The crap has to stop.
Yep, it has to stop. There's still killing going on in the world. I mean, look at Iraq. I mean, look what we did to Iraq. There are people dying there, what it seems like every day now.
Right. And I hear we're selling them more arms to help them fight the so-called extremists.
Yeah, we're selling them drones.
Right.
To help them against Al-Qaeda. And the definition of Al-Qaeda to me is anything our government needs, whenever and wherever it needs it to be. Any
right.
dissenter could be considered Al-Qaeda.
Well, I have 2 points about selling arms to Iraq and Al-Qaeda. First of all, there was no Al-Qaeda, and I use air quotes, in Iraq before, we invaded in 2003. If they're there now, I don't know. But secondly, we're arming elements of Al-Qaeda in Syria.
Right.
But we're arming Iraq, the government of Iraq, to fight so-called Al-Qaeda in Iraq.
Right. Do you remember when Bush used to say, we're fighting them over there,
right,
so we don't have to fight them over here?
Right.
They chose the battlefield of Iraq.
Right,
that's
whatever.
That's what you said.
Yeah. Big fat liar.
Yeah, big fat liar that belongs in jail.
So, and that's the thing too is, George Bush is not the problem. He was a problem. Obama has continued many and expanded the policies of the Bush regime. So, it's the empire that needs to be overthrown.
Yep, the empire needs to be overthrown. Cindy Sheehan for governor, 2014.
And, if we say Bush needs to be in jail, then Obama and his administration need to have adjoining cells.
Of course.
So they can play crazy eights together for the rest of their lives.
Yep, they both belong in jail. So many people in D.C. belong in jail. Anybody that served the corporations over the people, I mean, they belong in jail as far as I'm concerned.
Well, can you think of anything worse than being in jail in an adjoining cell with George Bush and Dick Cheney for the rest of your life? So anyway, John, thank you so much for being on Cindy Sheehan Soapbox, and I just wish you the best for this year, continued healing, and, keep going with your advocacy, because I think that is the surest way for healing and to go forward.
Thank you so much, Cindy, and I love you very much.
I love you too, John. Thanks for being on Cindy Sheehan Soapbox again.